Have you ever wondered what it feels like to vanish into thin air, leaving nothing but an echo, a question, and a legacy of fear behind? Imagine stepping into your place of work or slipping into your uniform, only to find yourself forever swallowed by an invisible force, leaving the rest of the world to piece together your final moments. No trace, no explanation, just silence and a story that refuses to let go. Welcome to Silent Disappear. This is where we unravel the chilling tales that time itself seems desperate to bury, a series we call Vanished Stories. Here, mysteries aren't solved. They linger. Each episode sinks deeper into the unknown, where the boundary between fact and fable blurs and reality feels haunted by shadows. These are stories about people and places that have slipped through the cracks, leaving behind only the bitter taste of suspense and the kind of silence that screams for answers. Tonight, we travel back almost 80 years. The memory takes us to the edge of a legend, the place that has inspired horror, awe, and speculation alike, the Bermuda Triangle. They called it the Devil's Triangle, a vast, featureless blue expanse in the Atlantic Ocean, roughly bordered by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. For centuries, whispers have circled these waters, ships, vanishing compasses, spinning madly, entire crews swallowed by invisible jaws. But on December 5, 1945, this silent sea claimed its most infamous victims, Flight 19. It was a day like any other, a Wednesday unremarkable in every way, except for the headlines about a cold snap and the Christmas season approaching. The world was weary but hopeful. World War II had ended just 4 months earlier, and the United States was adjusting to peace after years of chaos. Fort Lauderdale, Florida hummed with the quiet routine of a military base in transition. The sun glimmered off the runway, where 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers awaited their orders. Each was painted the color of midnight, battered yet formidable symbols of American ingenuity and power. These weren't novices preparing for a dangerous mission into enemy territory. No, the young men scheduled to fly Flight 19 were trainees, pilots, bombardiers, and radio men being readied for peacetime patrols. They were under the command of Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a seasoned naval aviator who, despite his experience, carried a shadow of unease as he reported for duty. On that crisp December afternoon, Taylor and 13 crew members had one simple task: a 3-hour routine navigation exercise. Fly due east into the Atlantic, drop practice bombs on a watery target, then veer north before turning back to base, a triangle over the triangle mapped with military precision. The world outside was blissfully unaware of what was about to unfold. Mothers were wrapping presents for boys who had narrowly escaped death overseas. Mechanics on the base exchanged easy laughter, eager for the quiet of another Florida sunset. Radios crackled with the low hum of static, not yet heralding urgency or fear. No one knew that in a matter of hours, this horizon would become a chasm of mystery. At 2:10 p.m., the 5 aircraft lifted off their engines, humming with the confidence of routine. The sky stretched clear save for distant wisps of cloud. Waves beneath caught the sunlight, sparkling obliviously as the bombers soared overhead. What happened next, what unfolded between that takeoff and the sinister silence that followed, would become one of the greatest, most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. For as Flight 19 traced its path over the fabled Bermuda Triangle, all contact was lost. Their desperate radio transmissions flickered with confusion and dread. I don't know where we are. Everything looks strange, even the ocean. Their voices, once steady and crisp, became tangled, afraid then were gone entirely. No fragments of wreckage, no bobbing bodies in the surf. Even the rescue plane sent to find them vanished in pursuit, never to return. As news of the disappearance swept across the country, Panic gave way to speculation, then to legend. What force could wipe out 5 planes, 14 men, and an entire search crew, all in broad daylight in peacetime within sight of the Florida coast? Was it human error? A catastrophic storm, or something far stranger, lurking within the blue abyss? Tonight, as the tides swirl in the Bermuda Triangle and the stars blink indifferently above, we set out to retrace the final moments of Flight 19. We will listen to their last harrowing transmissions. We will peer into the chilling silence that followed. In this haunted space where history and haunting collide, there is a story begging to be told. Are you ready to vanish with us? Stay close, keep your eyes on the horizon, and whatever you do, don't let go. It is December 5th, 1945. The world, still shivering from the aftershock of World War II, finds itself in a moment of uneasy peace. Across the globe, men are returning home, families reunited, cities and navies rebuilding. At Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a group of young men are about to embark on what is supposed to be just another training flight, a routine part of their journeys as navigators, radio men, and pilots in the U.S. Navy. For these men, the war might be over, but their sense of duty burns as fiercely as ever. The central figure of our story is Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, born in Corpus Christi, Texas. Taylor, at 28, is already a veteran flight instructor. With over 2,500 flying hours and deep brooding eyes below his military cap, Taylor is well liked among the men, calm under pressure, known for his steady hand on the control stick. His laughter is rare, but when it comes, it fills the mess hall. He's the kind of man people trust with their lives, and for 5 eager young crew members on this fine December day, Taylor is both mentor and guardian in the wide, unpredictable Florida sky. Taylor's team includes Second Lieutenant Edward Joseph Powers, an earnest young man whose journal is filled with letters to his sweetheart back home; Ensign Joseph T. Bossy, a quiet but brilliant navigator; and 2 junior aviators, George Peonessa and Walter Parson, barely out of their teens, full of nervous excitement about their future careers. Each has his own hopes, his own plans for life after the Navy. The men are scheduled to fly Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, hulking aircraft with thick clanging doors and broad wings once used for hunting submarines over the Atlantic. The Avengers are sturdy, reliable, and trusted by the men who know them best. Taylor and his team, call sign Flight 19, assemble at Hangar 5 just after lunch, going through mechanical checks, radios, and weather briefings. There's camaraderie and gentle ribbing as they don their gear. Taylor gently chiding Peonessa for his untidy boots, Bossy mumbling something about cold fronts. There is nothing to suggest the moment is unusual, nothing to forewarn of what's to come. Outside, the Florida air is thick with humidity, typical for December. The sky has the color of faded porcelain. The naval base is alive with mechanics, radio operators, and the scent of engine oil and wet grass. In the ready room, a map is unfurled, their triangular route outlined in red grease pencil east into the Atlantic north, over Grand Bahama, then southwest, back to base. A flight plan, so common it barely raises an eyebrow. As Taylor gazes out over the tarmac, a seagull dips low, catching a wayward breeze that comes in off the Atlantic. A metallic glint from the sun bounces off the wings of his Avenger, blooming for a split second, like a fleeting omen. But Taylor, ever practical, dismisses any sense of dread. He never lingers long on superstition. For him and his men, the sky is home. At 2:10 p.m., the 5 aircraft rumble down the runway, their engines roaring like ancient sea monsters, and rise into the sky, vanishing one by one into the blue expanse. Normalcy reigns at the station. The ground crew relaxes, the officers settle down to paperwork, and a few men play poker in the canteen. There's laughter, the clink of enamel mugs, while out above the Atlantic in the dying glow of afternoon, Flight 19 cuts a clean path across the vastness. No one knows not yet that this routine day will become the most enduring enigma of post-war American aviation, a disaster that will haunt the Navy, the families, and the world for decades to come. The first sign of trouble comes just before 3:40 p.m. Not as a scream, but a scratchy call over the radio from Taylor. At Fort Lauderdale, Ensign Powers in the tower leans forward trying to decipher a strange message through static. This is an emergency. Both my compasses are out. I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm overland, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale. This is not an accident. The Avenger's navigational equipment had passed all morning checks, but far out somewhere above the Atlantic, Taylor's voice betrays confusion, tinged with dread. The sky has quickly turned. Clouds are gathering. The wind picks up. Visibility is poor. For Taylor, trained to trust his instruments, the malfunction is as terrifying as any enemy attack. The men of Flight 19 now float in a maze of thickening clouds, their compasses spinning wildly landmarks, vanishing beneath churned-up waves. Back at base, an urgent scramble begins. Radios crackle with forced clarity. No fewer than 13 operators, including experienced Marine pilots, furiously exchange coordinates with Taylor. But his responses become more erratic, as if lost in another language. Meanwhile, the families of the men wait unknowingly, some reading the evening paper, others preparing dinner. Wives start to set the table. Mothers glance at clocks. Sweethearts write letters, never knowing they will never be answered. The last sighting of Flight 19 comes from a passing commercial aircraft whose pilot claims to see 5 planes flying tight wings, level heading east, low on fuel. But no one can confirm the precise location. The Atlantic now growing black with dusk swallows, signals, and hope alike. As hour piles onto hour, the situation turns desperate. Every 15 minutes, the radio room grows hotter, more anxious. Taylor's last broadcast echoes through static. All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. Then nothing. At 7:45 p.m., the sun has long since vanished beneath a bruised, turbulent horizon, and silence engulfs the airwaves. Not even a whisper from Taylor and his men. Only the hiss of the Atlantic wind. Within minutes, word spreads through the naval base, a ripple of disbelief. A search and rescue PBM Mariner crewed by experienced rescuers is dispatched, immediately racing into the night. Family members are notified, some rushing to the station's gates, tears glistening beneath the harsh light of halogen lamps. But as midnight approaches, a new horror unfolds. The PBM Mariner itself has vanished, last reported north of Fort Lauderdale with 13 souls on board. No distress call, just a blaze reported by nearby merchant ships, then silence. The rescue swiftly becomes tragedy. In the quiet that follows, the investigators' families and friends can only stare at maps marked with growing circles of uncertainty. Outside, the Atlantic roars indifferent and eternal. Nothing of Flight 19 remains, no parachutes, no oil slicks, not even the shadow of a floating wing. The next morning, December 6th, dawns bleak gray and fuming with winter wind. The largest air and sea search in U.S. naval history swings into motion. More than 300 boats and aircraft swarm the triangle between Fort Lauderdale, Grand Bahama, and the Florida Keys, an area now forever marked as haunted by the name Bermuda Triangle. The air is filled with the relentless drone of engines, the slap of waves, and the shouts of search crews. Photographs are snapped from helicopters, boats trawl through miles of rough water, and nearby islands are combed for any sign of wreckage. On land, families clutch telephones, risking hope, fixated on newsreels that loop images of search parties, and military brass, their faces grim with determination. On December 7th, The story makes front-page headlines nationwide. 5 planes vanish, Navy in mystery, blares the Miami Herald. Reporters station themselves in front of base gates, desperate for a scoop. Newsreels circulate grainy images of the vanished airmen, now immortalized in somber black and white. Military police question. Everyone who checked the aircraft, poured the fuel, handled the radios. Mechanics comb hangar logs for overlooked defects. The men of Hangar 5 are questioned one by one. Some break down in tears, others stare numbly at the floor. Lieutenant Taylor's mother, traveling from Texas, demands answers, her grief veiled by stern dignity. The investigation reveals perplexing details. The Avengers departed with enough fuel for 5 hours standard for the trip. The weather, though treacherous, was not insurmountable. No sign of sabotage, no missed maintenance. It is as if the planes have been swallowed whole, one officer remarks, unable to mask his disbelief. A survivor from a nearby fishing boat insists he saw strange lights in the sky, but investigators quietly file this under unreliable. Early evidence points only to confusion in navigation and an inexplicable failure of instruments. The last recorded position of Taylor's flight is hundreds of miles away from where they should have been. Radio triangulation offers no consistent answer. The search grid expands daily as the hope of finding survivors gives way to a grim search for bodies and debris. Wreckage is expected, none is found. Rumors flare. Did the planes fly too far east, running out of fuel? Did a sudden squall or downdraft force a water landing? No oil slick, no raft, not even the metallic glint of a floating propeller emerges from weeks of desperate searching. Faced with nothing but mounting confusion, the Navy convenes a board of inquiry. Testimony is given. One operator recounts hearing Taylor sound disoriented, almost as if he didn't trust what he saw. Others insist the compass failures must have been electromagnetic, possibly the result of that notorious part of the Atlantic, a region already whispered among mariners as strange. In the months that follow, the case goes cold. The surviving families, mothers, wives, sweethearts gather for memorial services, tears brimming in their eyes as the chaplain delivers eulogies for bodies never recovered, stories never concluded. In the lull that follows, the myth of Flight 19 begins to blossom, a puzzle half answered, colored by grief and a growing sense of the inexplicable. With the official search deadlocked, the void fills with speculation, rumor, and suspicion. Theories spring up, each darker and stranger than the last. Was Lieutenant Taylor, an experienced combat pilot, suddenly overwhelmed by war nerves? Did he panic and lead the squadron astray? Taylor's record is spotless, but wartime experience is known to leave scars, nightmares, flashbacks, the persistent ache of past horrors. Some suggest Taylor was already troubled, his sense of direction failing under stress. Others point the finger at sabotage. Did someone tamper with the Avengers, maybe a disgruntled mechanic or a forgotten enemy agent still lurking in Florida's shadowy ports? Each possible suspect is interrogated, alibis checked, but no evidence emerges. The men in Hangar 5 close ranks resentful at the suggestion. Most enduring, though, is the magnetic pull of conspiracy theory. The Bermuda Triangle, a term only later coined, now enters the national consciousness. Amateur sleuths, occultists, and even some naval officers begin to suspect there's something more sinister at play, a massive geomagnetic anomaly, hidden vortex, or even an Atlantis lying beneath those churning waves. Some claim to have seen weird lights or unidentified aircraft near the search grid on the night of the disappearance. Others invoke the possibility of time warps or alien intervention, their ideas finding new life in pulp magazines and late-night radio. A parallel inquiry begins to look at the mysterious fate of the rescue mariner. Why did it too vanish without trace? Did the area itself somehow interfere with electronics? Investigators pore over radio logs. Some entries describe unexplainable interference. Others insist on technical faults. Among the strangest testimonies is one from a Coast Guard officer who swears he witnessed an aurora-like shimmer in the sky just as the Avengers passed overhead. He is quietly reassigned. Over time, the controversy grows until seemingly everyone has a theory. The war hero fallen to delirium, the mechanical flaw undetected, the supernatural force lurking in the Atlantic, or a government cover-up designed to conceal technological secrets. Yet for all the allegations, interviews, and hours of broadcast speculation, not a shred of debris is discovered, nothing to anchor the story to Earth. The world is left not with proof but with possibility. Years pass, then decades yet. The mystery of Flight 19 never truly fades. The military archives fill with yellowing papers, witness statements, and the scratchy remnants of the final radio calls. Then in the 1970s, a startling development. A team of underwater archaeologists searching near the Florida coast for sunken Spanish galleons discovers the corroded remains of several World War II-era bombers. News spreads quickly. Has Flight 19 at last been found? For weeks, headlines gush with hope, speculation, and images of barnacle-encrusted wreckage hauled from the deep. But hope quickly turns to disappointment. Serial numbers don't match. None of these derelict planes belong to Flight 19. They are relics from other tragedies, other forgotten crews. The Atlantic, it seems, is a graveyard of secrets. The disappointment oddly reignites public fascination. New technology, side scans, sonar, deep-sea submersibles spurs wave after wave of exploration. Each time the answer eludes. Reports surface of strange electromagnetic readings of machinery, malfunctioning in the search zone, and experienced divers feeling a compelling urge to turn back. In 1991, a surprising new clue emerges. An amateur historian uncovers sealed documents suggesting that advanced radio beacons stationed in the Atlantic occasionally interfered with compasses, possibly explaining the navigational chaos that beset Lieutenant Taylor and his team. But the conclusion is deeply unsatisfying. There's no proof, only patterns, only the echo of uncertainty. The families of the vanished still gather each year at the memorial near Fort Lauderdale, a simple stone etched with the names of Taylor Powers, Bossy Paonessa, and Parson. Navy officers, veterans, children, and grandchildren bow their heads in silence. But then, decades after the disappearance, a diver searching the deep trenches near the Bahamas stumbles upon something truly strange. An aircraft almost intact, its undercarriage buried in silt, surrounded by nothing but desolation. The markings match a Navy Avenger. It's not Flight 19, but inside rescue personnel discover something startling. The cockpit clock stopped precisely at 7:45 p.m., the very moment Taylor's last transmission crackled across the waves. Was this just a coincidence? Or had the triangle finally offered up its first whisper of truth? As the diver surfaces sunlight glinting off the battered remains of the Avenger, the world is reminded that some stories may have answers, but others remain forever lost in the deep. The last radio calls the vanished planes and the haunted families. They become a legacy, a warning to those who would seek the truth in the places where nature and myth collide. And for Flight 19, somewhere in the endless blue, the clock still ticks its echo, reaching through the darkness, waiting for a final revelation. As we close the final chapter of the haunting mystery of Flight 19, let's gather the fragments of this chilling saga, a story that has baffled historians, experts, and families for nearly 80 years. On a December afternoon in 1945, 5 sturdy U.S. Navy TBM Avenger bombers lifted from the runway at Fort Lauderdale, each piloted by men trained for the fiercest theaters of war, each expecting a routine mission. The sky was clear, the crew seasoned, and the planes well prepared. There was no hint that these 27 men were flying into the pages of legend, but somewhere above the endless blue chaos unfolded. The radio transmissions, now infamous, became cryptic and urgent. "We can't see land. We can't find west. Everything is wrong, strange." Their voices, fragmented by static and fear, carried the first chilling note that something had gone terribly awry. Navigators grew disoriented. Compasses spun wildly or failed. Fuel gauges dropped as hopes of rescue dwindled. Then only silence, the kind that echoes hollow and unyielding across the decades. Search efforts mobilized instantly. Dozens of planes, ships, and men scoured the patch of Atlantic now shrouded in grim mystery. They found nothing. No fuselage, no oil slick, no desperate SOS on the wind. Not even the rescue aircraft sent in pursuit, PBM Mariner Training 49, would return vanishing as though plucked from existence by some unseen hand. The Navy's official report teetered between rational explanations, faulty navigation fuel, exhaustion, sudden weather, and the inescapable truth there was no trace. No evidence, no sightings. Flight 19 and the Mariner rescue plane simply disappeared, their fate swallowed by the vast, unknowable heart of the Bermuda Triangle. Yet these are only the cold facts, the traceable beats of a disaster recorded on paper. The deeper, more unnerving shadows of Flight 19 lie in the spaces between the facts and what was heard, what was felt, and what remains inexplicable. Eyewitnesses spoke of magnetic anomalies disturbing navigation, of sudden unnatural fogs crawling over the sea. Radio operators strained to piece together the desperate transmissions, hearing nothing but inconclusive signals. Families waited for news that never came, left with nothing but empty promises and the ache of absence. And over time, legends filled the void tales of portals, time warps, and vengeful seas, a mythos that continues to grow, even as the ocean itself keeps its secrets. Reflecting on Flight 19, we are confronted with more than just the mechanics of a lost mission. We are forced to face the sheer vulnerability of human life and the terrifying dominion of the unknown. These Navy airmen were warriors, disciplined, trained, and fearless. Yet it was not combat or machine failure that defeated them, but something intangible and formless. In an age of technology and precision, they were undone by confusion and disorientation, a reminder that even the most advanced among us can falter before the raw power of nature, or perhaps powers darker still. What makes Flight 19 so deeply unsettling is not just the loss, but the absolute void it left behind. In a world hungry for answers, closure, and justice, the Bermuda Triangle offered only silence. Wives, parents, and children turned their eyes to a horizon that would never yield a return, left alone to grapple with the agony of not knowing, haunted by what-ifs, by dreams of a voice restored over crackling radio, by echoes of engines humming under sun-bleached clouds. Was it merely a convergence of unfortunate mistakes, compasses rendered useless pilots, misled by faulty bearings, sudden squalls that blotted every chance of survival? Or do deeper, more primal forces dwell out in those blue depths, something that resists all logic, all explanation, and perhaps all rescue? As the years stretch on, the story of Flight 19 has become less of a naval incident and more of a parable, a reminder that for all our science and steel, there are places where reason breaks upon the rocks of the inexplicable. Here in the Bermuda Triangle's embrace, fact and folklore merge, and the boundaries between the physical and the supernatural blur like mist above the waves. In this darkness, humanity must confront its limits. The sailors, aviators, and investigators of Flight 19 reached into the unknown and found only absence staring back. Their story ripples across generations, calling into question our own faith in ordered justice and the ultimate recoverability of truth. Sometimes life simply vanishes, and we are left with the silence, As we contemplate the mystery Flight 19 left behind, we are reminded that the world is vaster and more unfathomable than we can ever fully comprehend. We are small, our tools fragile, our certainties fleeting. Still, we search. Still, we hope for signs for closure for the lost voices to find their way home. But the sea remains impassive, its secrets locked tight beneath ceaseless waves. And so, we are left asking, what truly happened on that December day, when 27 souls soared into history and legend never to return? Do their spirits still wander, searching for a way home through endless sky and water? Or are they forever claimed by the inscrutable shadows of the Bermuda Triangle? In the silence that follows, ask yourself if Flight 19 could simply vanish without a trace. How many other mysteries are waiting just beyond the horizon for us to notice that they are gone? And when something disappears utterly and finally does it, ever really leave us? Or do these untold stories continue to echo forever, haunting the edge of the known world?